I mean, what the telcos really look for is what's known in the industry as a hero phone. A great example is when AT&T locked up exclusivity for the iPhone. They really did very well in terms of net adds, beating out Verizon and others, and it all had to do with that phone. So the hope is that Samsung, which arguably now has, as one person put it, captured the cool with the S3. The S4 is going to be hopefully an even better device.
Maybe even cooler.
Yeah, it'll certainly be a little bit bigger and more powerful. You know, the hope is that they'll have a real hero phone on their hands.
Well, and let's see how that would turn out for the telcos, because I know Jennifer Fritsche, you cover the telcos for Wells Fargo. Who could benefit the most from a successful S4 launch?
All of them, really, but I would think you'd have to say AT&T because, as John pointed out, they've been the most dependent on the iPhone since they had that exclusivity for so long.
Right, they've had that exclusivity for so long. But it's interesting, though, as John had pointed out before in his notes, that so far none of the telcos have signed up, committed yet to the S4. Do you read it?
Well, it hasn't been announced yet. I think that's part of the issue, but if you look at the S3, it's carried by all the major carriers.
So the assumption is that it will be.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer, for the iPhone 5 and how, some have said that it's been sort of a lukewarm reception in some ways. How important has that been for the telcos?
It was the #1 selling smartphone device at the high end in the fourth quarter, but it was quickly nipped at the heels by the 4S. So that is significant. The Apple stronghold is still there. Any sort of less dependence they can have on one particular company, such as Apple, is very positive, since subsidy pressure is a huge challenge for the margins of this model right now. And that was best evidenced, Betty, in the fourth quarter when you saw huge margin degradation versus third quarter levels.
So then, John, how do they keep their margins up then? What has to happen there?
I think one thing that may happen, Betty, is you're going to see subsidies begin to disappear over time, right? We still have new every two, as they call it. In terms of upgrades, every 2 years you can upgrade your phone. The problem is...
Could that change?
Well, it could change, because previously what the carriers were doing was upgrading people who had a feature phone, not using a lot of data, not really having a data plan, and upgrading them to a smartphone. So it really paid off for the carriers to subsidize that upgrade. Now you're getting smartphone to smartphone upgrades. The telcos are having a much longer payback period. And, it's putting pressure on them to come up with innovative ways of doing
another way, right.
Yeah, whether it's financing a phone or, offering discounted service in exchange for you and me going out and buying the phone, much like the European model.
Jennifer, why is Verizon your top pick for this year?
Verizon's our top pick for the year, Betty, because I can identify many catalysts for this one. Certainly, they're further ahead than anyone else in terms of LTE, long-term evolution, which is the 4th generation. On the cash flow side, their wireless is really second to none. Who knows what will happen with Vodafone? That chatter seems to be upticking. I think if they bought in that 45% ownership stake from Vodafone, that would be seen as a significant positive, because it would remove a significant overhang from the shares. And on the wireline, too, on the consumer side, they have actually been growing this segment, really driven by their Fios initiative.
All right, and John, just on one final note, we've been focusing on the smartphones and the telcos, but Apple, perhaps to fend off this sort of Samsung momentum, they're talking about an iWatch. They're not specifically, but there's speculation that there's an iWatch coming. What's going to be key for that? Because that's not going to be subsidized.
That's not a layup. It's not subsidized. It's basically an extension cord of the phone onto the wrist. So they're talking about porting certain functions like nav, time, email onto the wrist. Samsung is working on a similar device. The challenge in my mind is Apple, with the iPhone, took a tech device and turned it into an accessory. Now they're taking an accessory and turning it into
a phone,
an expensive tech device. So the question is, can they
pull it off?
Yeah.
Right.